This is not a presentation. This is something that actually happened to me. I told Al the story, I told Samuel the story, told Martin the story. They thought you might enjoy it. You might not enjoy it, but they thought you might think that it's interesting. And there might be a business application here. Edwin, I was a merchant at Macy's, and I'm always a little bit nervous when I'm in church or in a Christian group meeting because the Lord threw the merchants out of the temple. So I'm looking over my back a lot sometimes. I never pick up hitchhikers. When I was young, I used to hitchhike because I didn't have a car, and I had a football jacket because I played football, and I found out that people would pick you up if you had on a football jacket, and so I could travel wherever I wanted to go, to school or back, by hitchhiking. But it's dangerous to pick up hitchhikers, right? Your wife has told you that. It's a bad thing. I never do it. A few months ago, I was in North Carolina at Ridgecrest at the orality meeting. And actually, I started feeling a little ill, and I told Samuel, I think I really probably need to go home. So I left early. It's a crisp fall day, and I'm driving through the mountains, and I come over a hill, and on my right is a guy in a red t-shirt hitchhiking. So I'm thinking, people are really having bad times now. The poor guy, I don't know. It's just me in the car. My wife probably will never know if I pick this guy up. I'll just pick him up. What harm could that be? So it took me a little while to process that. So by the time I had decided to really stop, I'm now down the road a little piece. But I stop. And he's sort of moving quickly to get to me. And I can see him out of my right rearview mirror. And I start to think, wow, this guy looks a little rougher than I thought when I zipped by him at 70 or less. So I have a little pistol in my glove compartment. I have a permit to carry. It's legal. But I'm feeling a little uncomfortable, so I said, wouldn't hurt. I'll just take it out. I'll just put it on my belt on this side so he can't grab it over here and shoot me. And I'll pull my shirt tail out, and, here we go. Well, the guy gets in the car, and I look at him. And he has no teeth here, black hair, beard, had, smelled a little peculiar. And I really didn't know what to say to him. So I was listening to a CD that I'd picked up from the orality conference. So I just said, hey, I'm listening to this CD. Is that okay with you if we just listen to this CD? He said, sure. So we drove 45 minutes or an hour, and I didn't say a word, and he didn't say a word. Eventually, he kind of points at the dash, and he says, I'm one of those oral learners. I just realized that. And what I had learned at the orality group, Samuel, I did learn something. They told us there that we used to think people that were oral learners were just illiterates and not very bright, and they've now discovered that geniuses can be oral learners. We also heard statistics like 80% of college students graduating never read another book. Why? Because they're oral learners. So the guy starts a conversation, and we chat about that for a while. So then I'm kind of loosening up to him. So I said, so tell me, where are you coming from? Where are you going? He says, well, I'm coming from Joplin, Missouri. I was there at my 17-year-old stepson's funeral. He killed himself. Okay. So we chat a little while, and he asked me about the orality group and what kind of group it is, and telling it's a Christian group. And I said, so are you a Christian? And he says, well, he said, my grandparents were real strong Christians. He said, but my dad was a labor union boss, and he was also the biggest bootlegger in the county. And he abused my sisters. He said, one evening I heard a noise in my sister's bedroom. I went in, and my dad was on top of my sister. He said, my dad beat me to a pulp that night. And the next day, I went to school, and my teacher said, what happened to you? And I told her. He said, the next thing I knew, I'm in court testifying against my father. But my father was able to convince the judge that I was just a bad kid. So I wound up in reform school. And he said my life was downhill from that point on. So he went to prison. He was an armed bank robber, not an armed bank robber, he was an armed robber. He said, but I never robbed good people. I only robbed drug dealers because they had more money than anybody else. That's good. I'm starting to feel a little sorry for this guy now. And I should be going to Atlanta in a few miles. So I'm saying, well, I have to drop you off up here because I have to go to Atlanta. And I was ready to drop him off. And I said, well, how far do you live? If I took you home, how far would that be? And he said, well, it's just a few more miles. It's Greenwood, So I'll just take you home. Okay, well, that will be good, So I'm taking him home, and he's telling me more about what happened in his life. He tells me the story of being in the car with his father one evening, meeting a man on a lonely dirt road, and his father's talking to the man, and then his father pulls out a pistol and kills the man. Then his father rolls over the man in the car 2 or 3 times. So this guy really lived an awful, awful life. So I said, well, what did you do? What happened in the rest of your life? Well, I married my childhood sweetheart. Her name was Sunshine. And we had kids. And he said, I got my act together. And I started a roofing business, and I had a really thriving roofing business until 2008 when everything crashed. And he said about that time, my wife was so depressed, someone convinced her to try crack cocaine, and she died of an overdose. So I walked away from everything. I got on my Harley, and I went to Louisiana, and I worked in the oil fields. And I've been there until the time that I came back to my stepson's wedding. And I'm going, wow. So I said, well, just trying to make conversation here. It's, it's too bad you're not a roofer in Atlanta because some squirrels have just gnawed through my fascia, and my roofer stood me up for 2 weeks now. He says, I can come fix it for you. And I'm saying, okay, it's pretty far away. He said, as long as you bring me back. So I said, well, okay. So I take him to my house. I go in and I knock on the door, and I said, Mary Beth, the roofer's here, but don't come outside. It's okay. So the guy fixes my roof. I take him, I put him in a hotel. It's getting dark by that time. I put him in a hotel, pick him up the next morning, and I'm taking him back home, and I'm thinking, I want to get this guy back to his home, and, I've done my deal, and I can leave with a clear conscience. It didn't work that way. So I started asking him. His name is Albert Ray. You just can't make up good Southern names like Albert Ray, So I said, Albert Ray, what are you going to do? And he said, well, I don't know. And I said, well, couldn't you start your roofing business back? That's a low threshold thing to get into. And he says, well, I have 3 problems. My driver's license are tied up between Louisiana and South Carolina, and I can't get that worked out. Number 2, I have a bench warrant that I have to pay in South Carolina. Number 3, I don't have a vehicle. So I said, okay. He said, but my driver's license are good. I looked on the computer, and they're really good, so I think I can get my driver's license. So I said, well, let's just swing by and get your driver's license. So we go by the DMV and work that out. Then we're going to the bank because he says, now, if you're going to pay my fine, and I'm loaning this. I'm saying I'll loan you this, and you can pay me back when you get on your feet. So as we pull up into the bank and we're getting out, I realize I've got a pistol on my belt on the left side here. So I'm like, I didn't want him to see it, so I'm trying to slowly get the pistol off of my belt and slide it under the seat, and Albert says, "Hey, what's that, a pistol? Let me see that. Let me see that. You got a pistol?" I said, "Well, it's not a very good one, you know." I later found out that he had 2 9mm in his bag. He told me that later when I picked him up. So I would have been way undergunned there. So we got the money. We go to the courthouse. The judge who had the bench warrant on Albert Ray was his first cousin. "Hey, Albert, how you doing? You got to pay the bench warrant." But how, you know, they were glad to see him. So we got him going. So Albert, I got him back in business. So this is a long way around starting a business, but I have him in business. So he still had his license, his construction license, or whatever you call it. So he got a contract with this company that owns the, I have a red light, owns the building that that controls the water. You know, I don't know what you call those things, the big buildings that control the water. And he was replacing windows. That's what he got a contract doing. They said, "We've got as much work as you want. As a matter of fact, you could work for here forever, replacing windows." You see, that building is a historical building, and it was built with those windows that swing out, and you put a stick in it. And since it's a historical building, they will not let them upgrade those windows. So every time a wind comes along, slam, it breaks a window. So Albert is now doing this, and it looks like he's going to be doing this for a while. So the sort of the clincher is as I'm taking him back the last time, and he's telling me about his family more and more, he says, "You know, I went to Hollywood and I met these writers and I met these actors, and there's a movie script for my life." And I'm thinking, "Boy, Roland, yeah, I believe that. Yeah, right. Yeah, sure." So I said, "Well, that's great, Albert. That's great. That's, you know." So he said, "Tell you what, I'll send you an email with the movie script." That'd be great. That'd be great, Albert. Next morning, I get up and go to the computer, look at my emails, and there's an email from Albert, and I hit print, and the movie script prints out. That's it. The name of the movie's Murder of Sunshine. So I'm out of time, but I guess if there's a moral to that story is I've been running around the world with Al trying to do big things for the Lord, and he basically said, "Wait, stop and help this guy first." So you just never know where an opportunity is going to come to help someone get started in business.